Welcome to Dumb Guys Talk About Smart Stuff. All right, welcome to the show. Today we're talking about the 2015 MLB All Star Game, and I'm Barry.
I'm Heath.
And first of all, what we want to get out of the way is, Heath, what is your voting philosophy when it comes to the All Star Game? What matters most to you?
You know, I try to consider a few things. What kind of comes into play is what's the guy's stats right now?
Yeah.
And then I try to put that in perspective by, has this guy done this before? Is it a sign that he's going to continue to do it?
So you're looking at past years as well.
Past years as well. And I also look at, say, like if two guys are close, and you can see from my hat and everything that I'm a Giants fan, that I think it's okay to vote for your hometown guy.
Right.
Yeah. So
I mean, sometimes you got to vote for your for your favorite players.
Yeah, you do. And so I usually give myself like one or two of those out of my voting.
Yeah. Right.
Like a Giant over another guy that might be close.
If it's close.
Yeah, if it's close.
If it's close, that's perfectly justified.
Yes. And I think a good example of a place that's close was the shortstop with Brandon Crawford, the Cardinals guy who I'm blanking on. Peralta, and then Tulowitzki.
Yeah.
And so I think a Giants fan, it's okay if you vote for Crawford in that spot.
Right. Although I think I had Tulowitzki all the way. I think he got the brunt end of it this year.
I did, and I think there's kind of a phenomenon that happens there with those great players that keep doing the same great thing every single year. People kind of start taking it for granted.
Yeah.
And I think Crawford's the new guy on the block, and so he's getting a lot of praise, even though right now he's hitting into 250s, and Tulowitzki's hitting 320. The year before he hit 340. So 320 might even sound like a downgrade from 340, but just Crawford's doing something he's never done before, even though it's not as good.
Yeah, and I think Tulo's getting punished because he's hurt a lot. He's been hurt a little bit this year, so he hasn't spent a lot of time out on the field, although he's only missed maybe, 15 games, something like that.
Yeah, and compared to past years, he's doing really good as far as, and I think the games he's missing is his team giving him extra days off.
Yeah.
To be cautious.
Because the Rockies are not having a good year anyway.
They're not anywhere. No. They're going to save their, best commodity on their roster.
Yeah.
In case he's trade bait later.
Right.
So I think that's where those missed games come from.
Yeah. I pretty much have the same philosophy as you do, except for I am going to be more focused on this year's stats, the first half of this year. I want to know how good have they been this season, and if there's some guy that's having a great year, and like for instance Tulowitzki is having just a standard year.
Yeah.
I don't care what Tulowitzki's done for the past 10 years. I care about what that guy is doing this year, I think it comes up every once in a while when there's a superstar that automatically gets voted in because he's got a ton of fans.
Yeah.
But all in all, for me, it comes down to stats.
All right. So you're a stats guy.
I'm mainly a stats guy, and I'm mainly a this year's stats guy.
And which stats do you really value?
I look at across the board. I'm looking at total value. I like to look at batting average. Okay. I like to look at OPS. I want to see how many home runs do they have, how many stolen bases do they have. I'm not necessarily going to pick the guy with the most home runs or the most stolen bases, but I'm going to pick the guy that overall is having kind of the better season.
So like Billy Hamilton's stolen bases don't trump his other stats?
No, because his other stats are far below the next guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those stolen bases, while they are beneficial in a lineup for a season, for the All-Star game, no, I want someone who's all around.
Yeah. And I think a great player for as far as point of contention for the two different sides of whether like past play should play into it or just this half is Kershaw. And he's not in. He just lost the final vote. He wasn't picked on the roster by Bochy. But he's the guy that like past 5 years has been the best player in baseball.
Absolutely.
He started this season. His first 2 months are bad, but now he's starting to show really good signs of life. Like he's back. His numbers are actually pretty good right now. And especially if you just take June and what he's done so far in July, he's doing great.
Right. Well, and pitchers are difficult to judge too, especially when you're looking at stats. They pitch once every 5 days, and one start could completely alter their stats.
Yeah.
I mean, how many starts has a pitcher had up to this point? Maybe 15?
I see. I think, I just pulled up Kershaw's stats, and he had 5 the first 10, 16, like 18 starts so far.
18 starts. Okay, so he's had 18 starts. And how many of those were quality starts is the question. And how many, and of those ones that weren't very good, did he get bombed? Did that push his ERA up to where it is, all the way up to 2.8?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's the thing, and that goes back to that phenomenon I was talking about with Tulowitzki, is that this guy's so good. Like he had 2 straight years of ERAs under 2, then he has an ERA now of 2.85, and
Right.
you're going, what's wrong with Kershaw?
Yeah. But you know what? When I looked at the stats at the beginning of voting about a month ago or so, maybe early June, Kershaw was way down the list for me. And there were a few guys that were standing out to me at that point in time in the season whose stats were deserving above Kershaw, I thought. I think now, though, coming up to the wire, they've evened out a little bit more, and I'd probably kind of I've been swayed a little bit towards Kershaw, I think.
Yeah, and I think for me though, the previous years tell you he's going to still be good, even though he got to a slow start. And the interesting thing about Kershaw is at the beginning of the year, all the batters are swinging at the first pitch, walking up to him, because he's got the best curveball in the game.
Right.
And it's not like the best curveball in the game went away; they're just finding a way to not see it.
Right. They don't want to see the curveball. They want to hit the fastball
and
that's coming.
By
in.
Kershaw's stats now, it looks like he's adjusted back and found a way to still get guys out, even though they're swinging at the first pitch along with him.
Now this actually brings up a good point that I wanted to get out is, what's the point of the All Star game? Like, is it to win? Do you want your team to win? I mean, you're a National League guy. We know that. I'm an American League guy. So we're already kind of bumping heads now.
Yeah.
So do you want them to pick the best players so that team can win?
You know, I was thinking about this last night, and I had almost a little bit of an epiphany. And I think you got to try your best to please everyone with this game, even though technically that's always impossible.
Yeah, right.
I mean, but you got to think like this was born as an exhibition, even though it counts now as home field advantage for World Series. That might just be a flash in the pan. That might go away.
Right.
And I was thinking like the first time a franchise player gets hurt because of this, that might go away.
Yeah.
And it's born as an exhibition for what the fans are going to see. And it's like half the fans are going to be little leaguers. Half the fans are going to be, some fans are going to be old guys. Some are going to be our age in our 30s. And then it's like the honor for the players.
Right.
Because the players take it seriously whether or not they go. And
it is an honor.
It is.
It's a big honor.
Yeah, it is. And it's another something else on their Hall of Fame resume.
Right.
All that. So I think it's like you got to take all of that and put it together and try to please everyone.
Yeah. And I mean, ultimately, this is a business. Baseball is a business.
Yeah.
And they want to bring out the fans. They want to get the ratings on TV.
They do.
They want that home run derby to bring everybody to the TV to watch.
Yeah, and I mean, like, all those little leaguers, who do they want in there? I mean, I think that guy's got to go. All the old timers and all of us looking at, say, OPS. Like, you got to stick a couple guys in the All-Star game that are leading the league in OPS to make us happy.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like you got a full roster. You got to try to make all those people happy. There's always going to be that person, like somebody like me that likes to consider, like, is the best player in the game putting together a Hall of Fame career. I want to see that guy in the All-Star game.
Yeah.
So a Kershaw not going with my philosophy isn't going to make me happy.
Right.
But Miguel Cabrera went.
Yeah.
Who is with a similar type of resume.
Well, and Miguel Cabrera is a no-brainer, though. He's also leading the league in average. I think Miguel Cabrera he's got like 20 home runs or something like that. I mean, he's up there. He was a no-brainer for me when I saw him there.
Yeah.
So this argument brings up a good point. Now, what about Chris Bryant? How do you feel about him going in his first year? He didn't even get called up until the second or third week of the season.
And Chris Bryant, I was looking at the roster today, and the National League didn't need a third baseman. He's the third baseman. They didn't need a Cub because Rizzo's already going. And so any position player could have taken his place.
Right.
Or anybody. They could have added another pitcher and taken Kershaw. And so to me, it's like a guy that doesn't even have 100 career games yet. It's hard to justify it, but at the same time, if you stopped right now, he's probably the Rookie of the Year.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing, too. Like, think a couple of years ago when Trout was bursting out of the scene and he made the All-Star game.
Yeah.
And it's a big deal. Like, they want, in baseball, I think it's important to have those guys where they've made the All-Star game every year they've played since a rookie season.
And some guys that break out big, like Trout, Pujols was a guy like that for a long time. Like his rookie year, he hit something like 330.
Yeah.
And then ever since then, he's an All-Star.
Right.
But that's the thing. Looking as the honor for the players, I could see how other players would be pissed off about him going.
I guess I could see that. But I think that he's also having a great year, considering he didn't get called up until later on in the season. Among National League third basemen, he was third in home runs, third in RBIs. He's well above the National League average in offense across the board, not just by third baseman. So,
but there are a couple of things about his stats. Is one is 95 strikeouts already, which is I think that's a pace to get close to like 180.
yeah. I mean, he's a rookie and he's going to
He is a
strike out a
rookie.
lot. And you know what? You know how the game has changed. Strikeouts aren't really that bad anymore.
They're not, and also like I said, you got to try to please everyone. You're satisfying the hype. And I mentioned to you Matt Duffy, and like I'm not saying Matt Duffy should go, but I'm saying his stats are comparable, but you don't hear anything about him.
Right.
There's no hype around him.
Yeah.
But there's hype around Bryant.
They were comparable, although Bryant's were still better. And I think Bryant he's been identified as an upcoming superstar. I don't know if Duffy's been.
Duffy's been a good prospect. He's had like 320, 330 hitting years in the minors, and the Giants have always considered him a high prospect. He was like 4 for 6 last night, which made him hitting like 295 now,
right?
With 8 home runs.
I mean, there's got to be a reason though. I've never heard of him. Like the only reason I heard of him is because you told me and you're a Giants fan.
Yeah,
but Bryant as a Cubs fan, he was the #1 overall prospect in baseball.
Yeah, and he had a 40 home run minor league season in a minor league season.
And I don't know a lot about him, but I just know there's a lot of hype, and I know I got him in my fantasy league, and he's doing pretty good. So
yeah, yep. So that's just some interesting things. I mean, Bryant's he's definitely satisfying some hype because with that, like I said, any position player could have been taken because a third baseman wasn't needed.
Is there a position player that didn't make it in the National League? Not pitcher, position player that you think should have gone over him?
One thing about that is hitting is down right now. And so there's not really anybody. I saw that the stats really blew me away. Maybe Sterling Marte is somebody that's been hot in the first half this year.
He was having a good year. And
I don't think Freddie Freeman went. He's always a good player every year. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, those are a couple that are coming to mind. So it is that I can see how experienced players would be unhappy the guy with less than 100 games went, but he's satisfying that hype.
Yeah. Now, does this correlate at all, perhaps, with the situation back in 2011 where Pujols did not get elected to the All-Star game, but Gabby Sanchez went instead?
Yeah, and so this is kind of a historical example to use, which isn't too deep in history, 2011. And this one probably has a little bit of a caveat in that the Marlins needed a representative.
Yeah.
So he was the only Marlins on the team. But Pujols is somebody, so the 3 years leading up to this, he was MVP 2 years in a row and then second for MVP. Mm-hmm. And then at the All-Star break, he was hitting, I think it was 280 with something like 18 home runs.
I think it was, it was even closer to 300, I think. He was having a great year.
He's having a great year, but I remember back then, that people are going, what's wrong with Pujols? He's not hitting 350.
Yeah.
Like he had been the 3 years before.
Right.
And it's that whole thing of like, this guy's been so good doing it every year. And then Gabby Sanchez is like, as a rookie, hit 19 home runs. And then this next year, he's having a decent season and being the new kid on the block.
Yeah.
But the thing that is, from that, he hit another 19 home runs that year. And from that season on, he never really had a full season again. Mm-hmm. And so you can, to me, that's an example of, even though he's the new kid on the block, he hasn't proven that he's going to keep it up. And he hasn't proven in the same way Pujols had. And Pujols is still having a better season.
Yeah. I mean, and Pujols ended having a great season as well.
Yeah, and the Cardinals won the World Series that year.
The only thing to say about that is that at the time of the All-Star game, he had played in about 20 less games.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming it's due to injury. I didn't do the research.
Yeah, and we didn't we're dumb guys, didn't do the research. But we didn't find out if he had an injury that would made him miss the All-Star game. Mm-hmm. But even if that happens, in my mind, you pick a guy like that and then replace him if you want to take Sanchez.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
And when you mentioned this to me before I did the research, I thought, you know what, I'm going to look at this and I'm going to see that Gabby Sanchez really did deserve to go. But I disagree with that. I think that Pujols should have been elected to the All-Star game. He was having a better season at the time. And perhaps the only reason that Gabby Sanchez went is because he was a Marlin and he was the only one.
Yeah.
And so how do you feel about that? How do you feel about every team having to be represented there?
I honestly think that should be changed to only the home team as a representative.
Just the home team. That's an interesting philosophy.
And I've heard that one said.
Of course, you're going to lose a whole fan base if you don't bring.
You are, but I think most of the big market teams have enough money to have a guy going, which is the big fan bases.
Yeah.
The teams that have people show up and vote, like this year is like the Royals and Cardinals, were the teams that had the voters.
Right.
They're going
Don't get me started on the Royals.
Yeah, they're going to get their guys in.
Yeah.
I mean, the Giants voted in Posey and all that. So I think
Posey was a no-brainer, though.
Yeah, Posey is a no-brainer. And And I could even bring up another thing of like a guy doing great for years, and then the new kid on the block going last year when Buster Posey didn't go. Which when like guys like Luke Roy and I think there's 3 catchers went and not Posey went last year, which is really, and Posey ended up being like 6 in the MVP voting that year last year. So it's things like that I think happen all the time. Just like you're tired of getting the same guys in there. You don't give them credit for being good year after year,
right? And
then you just give this new guy that's also emerged the shot, and then he just doesn't keep it up the same way.
Him and new is always better, right?
It is, I guess. Yeah.
On the National League catcher, I thought Posey was the guy to go. He was leading all catchers in the National League, although a very close runner-up, and you probably won't like this because he's a Dodger, Yasmani Grandal.
Oh, really?
He's having a really good year.
Oh.
And I didn't even know that he was having that great of a year.
He's not a guy I've even heard that much of. I know Molina is always the Gold Glover, and catcher's really important for defense.
Yeah.
And I think he doesn't hit quite. The last couple of years, he hasn't hit as well as he had the few years before that.
Right.
So his hitting's a little bit down, but he's still considered the best defensive catcher out there.
How important do you think defense is in the All-Star game in a one-game scrimmage? How important is that defense?
I think, being an exhibition game, I'm actually not that into the winning the game. I think but even though they put a lot of value on it,
right?
Because of that thing, I think it's more like the honor. And I liked how like Ozzie Smith went for years. Like he had like 13 All-Star games.
Right, and he was a great defensive player. He'd
Defensive
go out
player.
there and do his backflips and put on a show for the fans.
And plus he made some diving stuff. I remember as a kid seeing him make a diving play in the All-Star game.
Right.
And turning a double play.
But ultimately, though, how important is defense in a one-game playoff? Do you think it's all about the defense, or is that really going to make a huge difference in that short, one game?
Well, I think what we see from like a playoff series, pitching and defense wins those things.
In a 7-game series.
In a 7-game series. 1-game series, right. I think it's the same thing.
And I think it's all about pitching, really. It's not, the defense is a secondary note, I think.
Yeah, well, and I think, I don't know, I'm somebody that gives a lot of credit to defense.
I mean, defense is great. Yes, it's great to have a good defensive guy out there. But is it really the game changer, especially in a situation like this, like an all-star game? Or is it, is it having that guy that can come out and strike out 6 guys in a row? Who did that? Didn't somebody do that? Wasn't it like Randy Johnson came out and struck out 6 guys in a row?
I've heard that.
Made John Kruk look like a fool.
Yeah.
It's those type of guys who are really going to change the game. It's not Ozzie Smith at shortstop who might get the ball hit to him, 3 times before he's taken out after 3 innings.
Yeah, but as far as like a position player, like defense, like a shortstop actually gets about 6 or 7 tries per game. And if he has like 10 more feet of range,
wait, a shortstop gets what?
About 6 or 7 opportunities per game a lot of times.
Per game.
Per game.
That's a 9-inning game.
Yeah.
But in the All-Star game, he's only going to be out there for 2-3 innings.
Yeah, but
so he's going to get a couple of shots.
He's going to get a couple of shots.
So is that a game changer in the All-Star game?
Honestly, I think defense is huge in winning games. I think it's really huge. Like I think you really sacrifice a Johnny Peralta compared to a Brandon Crawford defense-wise.
I think you do. I agree, but I don't think it's a big difference. And I don't even look into defense at all when I'm looking at stats when I'm trying to decide on the All-Star game.
Because I always try to think like if they're close and one guy's a Gold Glover and one guy's not.
Maybe if they're close.
Yeah,
maybe if I'm like this and I'm like, I don't know who to pick. Yeah. Maybe I go to defense.
And see, like for me being close, Peralta is considered subpar defensively short. And that's short's important position. Brandon Crawford is considered above average.
But his offensive stats were really good. So, and again, this goes back to I was looking at this about a month and a half ago, and I had Peralta going by a long shot. When I looked at it just yesterday, I had Tulo going.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have. Wouldn't have done.
He's hitting like 318 right now.
Yeah, and he's looking really good. So, that said, are there any picks this year, American League or National League, that you disagree with?
Well, something you brought up to me was all the Royals that went, and you didn't agree with any of them.
I don't agree with any of the Royals. You know what? That team is doing, more than they should be. They're working together as a team, but none of them were the best at their position when I compared them to every other player out there.
One thing that brings up the defense that we just talked about. The Royals are considered the best defensive team in baseball. Alex Gordon's considered the best defensive player in baseball.
Yeah.
Lorenzo Cain is up there, right up there. And so is that shortstop that went of theirs. So I think considering defense, but there was definitely their fan base got out there and voted and got those guys in. I would have taken Adam Jones. Adam Jones is a Gold Glover too.
Yeah,
and he's probably a more accomplished player than a Lorenzo Cain or an Alex Gordon.
Of those outfielders that went, J.D. Martinez should have been one of them.
He's a big timer.
J.D. Martinez is having a way better year than any one of those Royals that made the outfield team. So I'm disappointed there. I think he's getting snubbed big time.
Yeah, but I think like those educated things off stats, the managers that's picking job to make up for that and making the reserve.
Yeah.
And a lot of times what happens, the fans vote in the starter. The starter only plays 2 innings, and the reserve plays like 5 innings.
Right.
And so a lot of times the reserve has the last laugh.
Yeah. You know, the other player that I think is getting snubbed here, and I was so surprised not to see him, where's Prince Fielder?
Yeah. 345, 14 home runs.
I think he's leading the league in average, or he's second in average behind Cabrera.
Yeah.
He's got like 14 home runs. I think he hit a home run yesterday.
Yeah. And so even with Miguel Cabrera hurt, he wasn't taken as the replacement?
Not as far as I know, he wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah, so
That's interesting. He's in the home run derby.
He's DHing.
Yeah.
Prince Fielder is a DH, so he's considered a DH. Nelson Cruz got picked as the DH. And so I made an argument that Nelson Cruz should have been picked as an outfielder. He's played more games this season as an outfielder than he has as a DH.
Yeah.
And he's having a great year too. Nelson Cruz is having a great year. So yeah, take him.
Yeah.
But Prince Fielder should not be left off this roster, especially not over some of these guys who I just disagree with.
Well, Nelson Cruz is making our fantasy draft episode look kind of bad because we said don't take him.
I know he is.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say about that. That never happened.
Yeah, don't watch that episode.
You know, I was surprised because when I saw these rosters, though, initially, I looked them over and I thought, okay, these look pretty good. I don't have any qualms with any of these. But now when I go through my list, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 arguments.
Interesting.
Out of the, I don't know, 16, 17.
You know, and you mentioned to me one that I was a little surprised that you didn't agree with Todd Frazier.
Interestingly, he's on my fantasy team and he's doing pretty good for me. But as a third baseman, I thought Nolan Arenado was having a better year, a much better year actually. So I've got some notes here. I guess their stats were pretty close, but. Yeah, I didn't write the stats down, but
well, I saw Arenado. I think has a higher, like Todd Frazier isn't hitting that high batting average, like 260s,
yeah.
270s.
I think
Arenado's two more in the 290s.
He's got a higher batting average. He's got about the same amount of home runs, maybe even more home runs.
And I know
his OPS was better. I think.
Yeah, I was listening to the Giants on the radio game, and they said that there's definitely times when Arenado is the best player on the Rockies, even with Tulowitzki and Carlos Gonzalez there. That watching him, they can tell he is. There's periods of time where he's the best player on their team.
Yeah, and it's not one of those situations where one guy is getting in because of his history, because Frazier's only played one more season than Arenado, and Arenado's gotten better every year. So, yeah, I think he's getting snubbed there for sure.
Yeah, but at the same time, he's still there as the backup.
Yeah.
At least. And I think the All-Star Game's in Cincinnati, isn't it? So the hometown team gets a starter.
Is it?
I think so.
Okay, it shows you how much I know.
And so I think they're talking about the home run derby should have a lot of home runs because of that ballpark.
Yeah, right. That ballpark does have a lot of home runs. All right, I can see why the Reds guy is going to start. So,
and interesting enough, like how we're talking about how many Royals got in, I was looking at history, and there's a year where the big red machine was going on. You know, the days when like Pete Rose, Joe Morgan stuff.
Yep.
8 Red starters went.
Oh wow!
And the commissioner investigated it, and he replaced a couple of them with Willie Mays and Hank Aaron to kind of fix it, and then he took away fan voting for like 2 or 3 years.
Oh wow!
So there's times in the past where that happened even more extreme than the Royals case.
Well, you know what? I kind of suspect, there was some foul play in the whole Royals thing because, I don't think baseball would have wanted that small market Royals team to dominate the All-Star game.
Yeah.
And I think they kind of intervened. They said that fans were abusing the voting system, but I question that.
Yeah, well, I got on MLB.com. You can vote 25 times per IP address, so I could, and plus I think I could. I don't think it was just IP as an email address.
Yeah,
so I could go make a whole bunch of Gmail addresses and vote a couple hundred times if I wanted to.
Right, a couple hundred times, but they took away millions of votes.
Did they?
Yeah, they did.
Wow.
So, I think that was MLB saying we don't want all the Royals on the roster for the All Star.
Yeah, and I can imagine somebody could go out there and make a computer program to vote over and over again for him.
Oh,
but they did have that. What is it? The what do they call it? The kind of misconstrued letters and numbers to put in to try and make sure it's not a program voting.
Yeah, right.
On the site.
Yeah,
but you could kind of see how maybe somebody could start making email addresses.
Absolutely, yeah, and especially if you know how to program, you could easily do that.
Yeah.
We're dumb guys. We can't do that.
We're not advocating that.
Yeah. Just one more point to point out how we failed in our fantasy video. Jose Altuve, who I had, pegged as a number one pick in our fantasy league. I disagreed with him being picked at second base. I thought Kipnis is having a better year, and I thought Kipnis should go.
Oh, the Indians guy.
The Indians guy. Yep.
Yeah. And I remember he was like a top draft pick last year. It was a little bit disappointing. He only had like 250 last year, but he's always considered to be like a good player.
Yeah. The only thing that Altuve has on him is the stolen bases, and it's not even by that many. It's like 10.
Oh, okay.
But Kipnis had 5 triples, 27 doubles versus 16 for Altuve. His OPS was better. I think he had 1 less home run.
Oh. Well, another thing there is that Indians are a very small fan base, and it's a team you haven't heard that much of for a while.
No, we haven't heard anything about the Indians in a while.
Other than they got the old Red Sox manager.
That's right, Francona. Yeah, I think they were trying to rebuild. They haven't got there yet.
No, it hasn't worked out so far. They have some good names like Kipnis and Brantley and last Kluber.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And Kluber's a good example of how, I think you take the whole resume into account, but if a guy's having a terrible year, you still don't vote for him. Because Kluber was last year's Cy Young winner, but I don't think this year he's where they're going.
Yeah. Well, and has Kluber done anything before last year? I never heard of him before last year.
So he was a big breakout year last year. He's still got a lot of strikeouts, but he's not all-star game worthy, really.
Right. Yeah. I agree with you there. Were there any other players you wanted to highlight?
Not really, other than just I think the home run derby is going to be fun. The All-Star game is going to be fun.
I'm curious to see Bryant up against Pujols.
Yes,
that'll be fun.
One disappointment is the 2 guys I thought might win, Frazier and Prince Fielder, are up against each other in the first round.
Oh, so I
might have picked those guys 2 to make the finals, but I think I did a bracket and I have Pujols and Fielder making the final 2.
Okay, interesting.
With how the bracket is,
I just hope my players in the home run derby don't ruin their swing and have terrible first halves because I don't want my fantasy teams to go down. I got Bryant and Frazier in. So
yeah, I remember a year where David Wright was tearing it up. He was in the home run derby, made it to the finals of the home run derby, then had a terrible second half. A lot of people blame the home run derby on that. Yeah,
wasn't it Abreu one year dominated the home run derby, had a ton of home runs, and before that he would be like a 25 home run guy. After that, he never hit more than 15 home runs or 12 home runs in a season.
Yeah, and you can see how that could screw up somebody's swing.
Yeah, they changed their whole swing to playing that. And
Anyway, have fun. Thanks for watching.
That's right.